Milo never imagined his life would turn into a crime scene investigation over strawberries, but there he was, hunched over his backyard garden, staring at the suspiciously bare plants. The last time he had checked, they had been bursting with plump, red strawberries, each one carefully nurtured with water, sunlight, and the sheer will to keep them safe from pests. Yet, every morning the berries disappeared. No footprints, no broken fences, nothing but the ghostly remains of chewed-off stems. It was like something, or someone, was taunting him. And then, like clockwork, his neighbor Karen appeared, casually leaning on the fence, lips suspiciously stained red. "Oh, morning, Milo," she said, licking her fingers. "Nice weather today, isn't it?" Milo's eyes darted to her hands, where he spotted the tiniest hint of berry juice. His jaw clenched. He had suspected her for days, but this was practically a confession. "Morning, Karen," he said, forcing himself to stay calm. "Enjoying some fruit?" Karen gave an exaggerated gasp, placing a hand on her chest. "Oh, these? Just some from my fridge. You know, the organic kind. So expensive, but totally worth it." Milo's fists tightened. His strawberries were organic too, because they were his, and he was certain Karen hadn't bought a single strawberry in months. She lived by a simple motto: why pay for something when you can steal it with confidence? For the next few days, Milo tried everything to catch her in the act. He installed a small camera disguised as a garden gnome, left fake notes on the fence warning about pesticides, and even spread crushed leaves around the garden to reveal footprints. But Karen was like a ghost, silent, precise, and infuriatingly smug. And then, the final straw came. Milo was at the grocery store when he overheard Karen at the checkout, boasting loudly to the cashier. "Oh, you should see the strawberries I grow at home. They're the best in the neighborhood. So juicy and sweet. I bring them to my book club, and everyone begs me for more." Milo nearly dropped his basket. His strawberries. And she was out here taking credit? His rage burned hotter than the summer sun. That was it. Enough was enough. That night, he paced his living room, brainstorming ways to stop Karen once and for all. He considered a sign that said, "Karen, I know it's you." But she'd just laugh it off. He thought about confronting her with the security footage, but she'd probably gaslight him into thinking he imagined it. He even considered hiring a security guard, but that was ridiculous. Then, like fate, inspiration struck. Scrolling through an online gardening forum, he stumbled upon a post about a rare hybrid plant, a chili berry. It looked exactly like a strawberry but had the spiciness of a ghost pepper. One bite and your mouth would feel like the pits of hell had opened inside it. Milo's lips curled into a mischievous grin. The next morning, he drove 2 towns over to find a specialty gardening store and purchased the seeds. "These are no joke," the store owner warned. "They burn worse than a breakup text." Perfect. For the next few days, Milo carefully mixed the spicy berries into his garden, keeping his real strawberries safely hidden. The plan was in motion. Now, he just had to wait. 2 nights later, his patience paid off. The garden gnome camera blinked to life as a shadow crept over the fence. The figure moved swiftly, plucking strawberries with practiced precision. Milo watched the live feed on his phone, heart pounding with excitement. Karen worked quickly, stuffing berries into a small bag before sneaking back into her house. Milo barely slept that night. He woke up early, grabbed a lawn chair, and sipped his coffee in his yard, eyes glued to Karen's house. Any moment now. Then it happened. A scream pierced the morning air. Birds flew from the trees. Somewhere, a dog started barking. The front door to Karen's house burst open, and she came flying out, red-faced, eyes bulging, mouth hanging open in pure agony. She staggered into the yard, flapping her hands wildly, gasping for air. What is this? My mouth. My tongue. It's on fire." Milo nearly choked on his coffee, struggling to hold back laughter. He grabbed his phone and hit record. Karen sprinted toward her garden hose, fumbling to turn it on. But Milo had thought ahead. He had shut off her water supply just for this moment. No. No, she screeched, frantically looking around. I'm dying. Help me. By now, the entire neighborhood was peeking out of their windows. Mr. Thompson from next door stepped outside, rubbing his eyes. Karen, what the hell is going on? He tried to kill me, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Milo. Milo stood, putting on his best confused but innocent face. Kill you? Karen, are you okay? You look a little flustered. You poisoned me, she screeched. Your strawberries. Milo tilted his head. My strawberries? You mean the ones that keep mysteriously disappearing? Karen froze. Her mind was spinning too fast to form a good excuse. Then, she did what she did best, she lied. Why you gave them to me, she stammered. You left them on my porch as a gift. Milo fought back a smirk. Huh. That's funny because I don't remember ever doing that. And if I had left something on your porch, wouldn't it be stealing to take them without asking? The gathered neighbors exchanged glances. Karen's face went through an impressive transformation, from rage to realization to outright horror. Then, as if the universe wasn't done humiliating her, Karen's body reacted to the chili once again. She hiccuped, then hiccuped again. The spice wasn't just burning, it was intensifying. Her eyes watered as she clutched her throat, her hiccups turning into desperate gasps. Milo finally took mercy, handing her a bottle of milk. Karen snatched it, gulping it down without shame. By the time she finished, her face looked like she had run a marathon through a desert. The street was silent. No one spoke. No one moved. And then, laughter. It started small, a chuckle from Mrs. Thompson, then a snort from Jake, and soon the entire street was howling. Karen, the neighborhood terror, had finally met her match. Karen wiped her mouth, glaring daggers at Milo. This isn't over, she growled. Milo leaned against the fence, arms crossed. Oh, I really hope it's not. And with that, the war had officially begun. Milo couldn't stop grinning. Every time he replayed the footage of Karen's spicy meltdown, he felt a new wave of satisfaction wash over him. It was perfect, better than he could have ever planned. She had stolen the berries without hesitation, bragged about her so-called gardening skills, and then had the most dramatic, over-the-top reaction possible. It was almost poetic. But even as he basked in his victory, he knew Karen wouldn't let this go. She was the type of person who thrived on pettiness. She wouldn't just accept defeat. She would come back harder, louder, and more unhinged than ever. The real question was, how far was she willing to go? The answer came sooner than expected. The next morning, Milo woke up to an aggressive knocking at his door. He groggily opened it to find Karen standing there, sunglasses perched on her nose, arms crossed, looking like she was about to file a lawsuit on the spot. You think you're funny, don't you? She hissed. Milo leaned against the doorframe, stretching as if he had all the time in the world. I do have my moments. Karen pulled something from behind her back and shoved it into his hand. It was an empty plastic container with the remnants of crushed chili berries at the bottom. You poisoned me. Milo raised an eyebrow, turning the container over in his hands. Poison? No, Karen, these are chili berries. They're spicy, sure, but they're completely natural. You must have gotten them mixed up with, oh, I don't know, the strawberries you keep stealing from my garden? Her jaw tightened. You think you're smart, but let me tell you something, I could sue you. I could have gone to the hospital. Milo suppressed a laugh. You didn't though, did you? She hesitated for just a second, and that was all he needed. You didn't go because they would have laughed you out of the building, he continued. Imagine walking into the ER, sobbing about how the strawberries you stole turned out to be spicy. That's not a legal case, Karen. That's just karma. Karen's face twitched like she was resisting the urge to throw something. Instead, she inhaled deeply and forced a smile, though it looked more like a snarl. Fine. You think this is over? It's not. You've made a huge mistake. Milo tilted his head. Oh? What are you going to do? Steal from me harder. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned on her heel and marched away, her ridiculous wedge sandals clicking against the pavement. Milo shut the door, shaking his head. He should have felt at ease now that she had been exposed, but something about the way she had said, "You've made a huge mistake," unsettled him. Karen wasn't the type to back down. If anything, this had only fueled her need for revenge. By that afternoon, the entire neighborhood knew about Karen's spicy disaster. The video had spread like wildfire through their group chat, and everyone had something to say. Some congratulated Milo on his clever payback. Others simply sent laughing emojis. A few warned him that Karen was dangerous when humiliated, but he wasn't worried. What could she possibly do? The answer arrived in the form of a police car pulling up to his driveway. Milo blinked as two officers stepped out, one adjusting his belt while the other pulled out a notepad. "Are you Milo Thompson?" the first officer asked. Milo nodded slowly. Yeah. What's this about?" The second officer flipped through his note. "We received a report from your neighbor claiming that you intentionally poisoned her food." Milo burst out laughing before he could stop himself. "Oh, come on. You can't be serious." The first officer sighed, rubbing his temple. "Sir, do you grow strawberries in your backyard?" "I do." "Did you recently introduce another plant into your garden?" "I did." "Did this plant resemble strawberries but was actually a spicy variant?" Milo nodded again. "Sure did." The second officer gave a tired nod, clearly unimpressed. "And did you, or did you not, plant them specifically to trick your neighbor into eating them?" Milo shrugged. "I planted them for my own entertainment. If someone happened to steal them, well, that's on them, isn't it?" The first officer let out a low chuckle, quickly disguising it with a cough. "Look, we're not saying you did anything illegal. There's no law against planting chili berries. But your neighbor is adamant that you set a trap to cause her harm." Milo scoffed. "Did she also mention that she stole them from my yard?" "She claims they were left on her porch as a gift." Milo rolled his eyes. "Of course she did. Look, officers, I have security footage of her sneaking into my yard and taking them herself. So, unless we're arresting people for stealing and playing the victim, I think we're done here." The officers exchanged a glance before the second officer sighed and put his notepad away. "Yeah, that's what we figured. She's been a handful to deal with." Milo grinned. "You have no idea." The officers left, and Milo wasted no time pulling up the group chat to update the neighborhood on Karen's latest stunt. The reactions were immediate. Everyone agreed Karen had officially lost her mind. But if Milo had thought this was the end, he was sorely mistaken. That evening, as he sat on his porch, sipping a well-earned beer, he heard something rustling near his fence. He glanced over and spotted Karen standing just outside his yard, her phone pressed to her ear. "Hello? Yes, I'd like to report an illegal gardening operation. My neighbor is growing toxic plants, and I think he's running some kind of dangerous farm." Milo nearly choked. She can't be serious. Karen caught sight of him and turned away quickly, pretending not to notice. Milo sighed, rubbing his temples. He had won the battle, but Karen was determined to drag him into a war. He had to end this. He stood up, walking toward the fence. "Karen, do you even hear yourself?" She gasped dramatically, lowering her phone. "Excuse me? Are you eavesdropping on a private conversation? You're standing right next to my yard, shouting about a non-existent crime. And toxic plants? Really?" Karen huffed. "Oh, so now you admit they're toxic." Milo groaned. "Chili. They're chili peppers, Karen. People eat them in restaurants all the time. You're just mad because you stole from me and got what you deserved." She pointed a finger at him, eyes wild. "This isn't over." Milo smirked. "Oh, I really hope it's not." Karen stomped away, but he knew she was already plotting something worse. Whatever it was, he would be ready. She wanted a war? Fine. He would make sure he won. And this time, he wouldn't just sit back and let her walk all over him. It was time to take things to the next level. Milo knew Karen wasn't done. She was like a storm cloud that never quite disappeared, always lingering on the horizon, waiting for the perfect moment to ruin someone's day. After her failed attempt to get him arrested, he expected her to back down, maybe stew in her embarrassment for a while. But Karen didn't know how to take a loss. She would double down. She always did. The first sign of her next move came in the form of a letter taped to his front door. The envelope was obnoxiously fancy, the kind used for wedding invitations, but the contents were anything but celebratory. Inside was a legal notice, written in aggressive, capitalized font, threatening to take him to small claims court for intentional infliction of bodily harm, emotional distress, and wrongful horticultural practices. Milo read it twice, then burst out laughing. Jake, who had just walked up the driveway with a bag of chips in hand, squinted at the paper. What the hell is wrongful horticultural practice? I think she just made it up, Milo said, shaking his head. She's suing me over spicy strawberries. Jake grinned. Dude, this is the best thing that's ever happened. Are we going to court? Can I come? Milo rolled his eyes. You just want to watch the chaos. Obviously. Milo wasn't worried. There was no way this would hold up. Karen had stolen from his yard. She had eaten the berries of her own free will. And most importantly, she was the one who had turned this into a ridiculous neighborhood battle. But Karen had money, and money could buy a lawyer willing to argue even the dumbest case. A week later, Milo found himself sitting in a small, beige courtroom, facing Karen and her legal representative. But the moment the lawyer walked in, Milo nearly laughed out loud. It was Karen's ex-husband, Daniel. Daniel looked tired. He carried a thick folder under his arm and had the dead-eyed expression of someone who had been dragged into one of Karen's tantrums before. As he sat down, he barely glanced at her. She, on the other hand, looked smug, as if she had already won. The judge, a stern-looking older woman with silver hair, peered down at the papers in front of her. Ms. Walker, you are claiming that the defendant, Mr. Thompson, deliberately harmed you with a toxic plant? Karen nodded, adopting a pitiful, wronged expression. Yes, Your Honor. It was a calculated attack. He planted those monstrous berries knowing I would eat them. The judge raised an eyebrow. Did he force you to eat them? Karen hesitated. Well, not force exactly, but he tricked me. He left them in his garden, where he knew I might acquire them. The judge's expression didn't change. So, you stole them. Karen's mouth twitched. That's not the point. The point is, he knew I would take them. It was an elaborate trap. Daniel sighed and leaned toward his microphone. Your Honor, if I may? The judge nodded, and Daniel turned to face Karen with the exhausted patience of someone who had suffered through years of her nonsense. Karen, he said flatly, you're suing Milo because he grew a plant. On his own property. A plant you stole. Do you hear how ridiculous that sounds? Karen's jaw clenched. You're my lawyer, Daniel. You're supposed to be on my side. Daniel exhaled sharply. No, I'm supposed to argue something that makes sense, and this doesn't. The judge cleared her throat. Mr. Thompson, do you have any evidence that the plaintiff took these berries without your permission? Milo grinned. I do, Your Honor. He pulled out his phone and played the security footage. The entire courtroom watched as Karen, dressed in all black like a cartoon burglar, tiptoed into his yard and plucked the berries right off the plant. The video ended with her stuffing them into her mouth before running back into her house. Jake, who had come along purely for entertainment, let out a loud snort, earning him a glare from Karen. The judge leaned back in her chair, unimpressed. Ms. Walker, this video clearly shows you trespassing and taking these berries without permission. If anyone here has a legal complaint, it should be Mr. Thompson. Karen's face turned an impressive shade of red. But he knew I would take them. That's entrapment. Daniel pinched the bridge of his nose. That's not how entrapment works, Karen. The judge sighed, rubbing her temples. This is a waste of the court's time. Ms. Walker, your case is dismissed. Mr. Thompson, I strongly suggest you invest in a taller fence. Milo grinned. Already working on it. Karen let out an outraged squeak, but had no choice but to accept her defeat. She stormed out of the courtroom, practically vibrating with frustration. Daniel, however, lingered for a moment before turning to Milo. Do yourself a favor, he said, tucking his folder under his arm. Find a way to keep her away for good. She doesn't know how to let things go. Milo already had a plan for that. The next morning, he installed motion-activated sprinklers along his fence line. Any movement near his garden would trigger a high-powered jet of freezing water. It wasn't harmful, but it was definitely enough to make trespassers regret their life choices. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Milo sat on his porch with Jake, sipping lemonade and waiting. It didn't take long. Karen, still fuming from her court loss, crept into her yard, peeking over the fence like a villain plotting her next move. She hesitated, scanning for cameras, but seeing nothing new, she took a step forward. The sprinklers exploded to life. A jet of ice-cold water hit her square in the face, drenching her instantly. She shrieked, stumbling backward, flailing her arms as she tried to escape the unexpected flood. But the sprinklers were relentless, hitting her from every angle. Milo and Jake burst out laughing. Karen sputtered, her once perfect hair plastered to her face, her expensive yoga outfit soaked through. She glared at Milo, teeth clenched. I hate you, she hissed. Milo smiled, raising his glass. Cheers. She stormed back into her house, slamming the door so hard that a bird flew off the roof in alarm. Jake wiped a tear from his eye. Dude, you're a legend. Milo leaned back in his chair, finally feeling at peace. Karen had lost. The neighborhood was safe. His strawberries were safe. And best of all, he had won the war without breaking a single rule. He took a long sip of his lemonade, savoring the taste of victory. And this time, it wasn't spicy.